So we're going to do the Chapter 7 quiz review, starting with number 1. It says, find the sum of the measures of the interior angles of a heptagon. So anytime you see this phrase, it's asking for how many degrees are inside of the shape. How do we figure out how many degrees are inside? N minus 2 times 180. So n always represents the number of sides. How many sides does a heptagon have? Has 7 sides. So 7 minus 2, how many triangles does it have? 5 triangles, 180 degrees apiece. That makes 900 degrees. Perfect. 900. The opposite is the number 2. They give you the degrees, and then you have to work your way backwards to find the classification. So we're going to set n minus 2 times 180 equal to 3060. So what is the first thing we'll do to solve for the number of sides? Divide by 180. What is 3060 divided by 180? Is what? 17. Add 2. And the number of sides is 19. I hope the recording cannot hear my stomach growl because that was loud. Did I classify the polygon? 19 gone. If you'd like bonus points, what do we call this? Nonadecagon. Nonadecagon. All right, number 3, we're going to underline some of the instructions because they're important. It says find the measure of each, go ahead and underline that, interior and exterior angle of a regular, go ahead and underline that, 30gon. What does regular mean to me? Equilateral and equiangular. So that means all the sides are congruent, and it means all the angles are congruent. In this case, we're finding angles, so the congruent angles are important. So to find each interior angle, we first need to know the sum of the interior angles, and then we will divide by the number of angles. So how do we find the sum of the inside angles? Yeah, n minus 2 times 180. So a 30gon has 30 sides. How many triangles are in a 30gon? 28 triangles, 180 apiece. That makes 5,040. So there's 5,040 degrees inside of a 30gon. Now we're going to divide it by the number of angles. How many angles are in a 30gon? 30. So how many degrees are each of those 30 angles? 168. For each exterior, you still need the sum of the exterior angles. What is the sum? What do all the exterior add up to? 360, and we want to divide it evenly by 30 angles, which makes 12 degrees. How can I know that both these numbers are correct? They should add up, they're supplementary, so they should add up to 180. So 168 plus 12 is 180, so that is perfect. Okay, so just make sure you watch the key wording. This one says each, whereas earlier it said sum. So when it says sum, that means what do they all add up to? When it says each, you're finding each individual. Okay. Now we have pictures to deal with. Number 4, my angles on the inside or the outside? Inside, so how do I figure out how many degrees are inside of a shape? Correct, n minus 2 times 180. So we got to figure out what they add up to. How many sides does this shape have? 5 sides. So how many triangles are there? 3 times 180 means there's 540 degrees. We'll add all the angles. We've got x. We've got 1, 22, and 100. I'm just going to combine them to 222, because why not? plus 90 plus 144. Bless you. I blessed you before. Pre-blessed. There you go. What's 222 plus 90 plus 144? 456. So subtract that 456 from 540, and x equals 84. Beautiful. That's for the first. Those were interior angles, so you had to figure out how many degrees they add up to. The second, they're not on the inside, they're on the outside. What is the sum of all the exterior angles? 360. Doesn't matter how many sides there are, they add up to 360. So we're going to add them. X and x make 2x. And we got 60, 64, bless you, or no, I think bless you, 36, and then 48. I ran out of room. Someone go ahead and combine those. 208. So when you combine all these numbers, it makes 208 plus 2x equals 360. What is 360 minus 208? 152 equals 2x. Divide by 2, and x is 76. Perfect. 76. All right, so that's on a picture. Either they're inside, and you have to figure out how many degrees are inside, or the angles are outside, and they add up to 360. Something else we learned about were parallelograms. There were 4 properties. I'm just going to remind you about the 4 properties of a parallelogram. How do I know this is a parallelogram? I don't know that they're parallel or congruent. Because it says. So because it's a parallelogram, the sides are congruent and parallel, but it's not in the picture. So make sure you're reading the directions so you know what shape you're dealing with. Parallelogram has only 4 properties. They were on our quiz last week. What was the first property? Correct. Opposite sides are congruent, and they are parallel. I'm just using the shorthand. What do we know about the angles? Opposite angles are congruent. If they're not opposite angles, then they are called consecutive. What do we know about consecutive angles? They're supplementary, means they add up to 180. And then the last one was about the diagonals. What do we know about the diagonals? They bisect each other. Make sure you clarify each other. All right, so in this case, we're dealing with angles only. That's the only thing we have in the picture. So we're going to use the 2 properties. The opposite angles are congruent, and then consecutive angles are supplementary. So, which one do you want to find first, U or V? U sounds good. Where is it in comparison to 124? It's opposite. So opposite angles are congruent, so 2U equals, well, 124. Divide by 2, and U is 62. So opposite angles. But V minus 3 is not opposite of 123. It's consecutive. They're on the same side. So they're supplementary. So option 1 is the longer option. 124 plus V minus 3, they will equal 180. So it's option 1. You can solve it. Option 2, if this angle is 124, what's 180 minus 124? 56. So you could just set V minus 3 equal to 56. Either way you do it, you get V equals 59. Because this one you'd have 121 plus V equals 180. Subtract 121 and still V equals 59. All right, on the back page we're going to do the properties first and then go back to the picture. There are 3 rhombus properties. What makes a rhombus a rhombus? All what? all sides are congruent. So all the sides are the same length, or the same length. What are the two other things we know about a rhombus? Diagonals are what? Perpendicular. There's one more, and it's still about the diagonals. Correct. They bisect opposite angles. So I'll show you what that means. That means the sides are congruent, so all of them would be the same length. What's the second one? Diagonals are perpendicular. Perpendicular means they intersect and form 90 degrees. So for any rhombus that you see, you can go ahead and put right angles at the intersection of the diagonals. And then it also means that the diagonals bisect opposite angles. So if this angle is 22 degrees, what's the angle next door going to be? 22 degrees. Okay. A rectangle has two properties. What are those two properties? All angles are 90. All angles are 90, and then there's one more. Diagonals are congruent. Meaning in a rectangle, the lengths are the same. So let's say let's set up a problem that you could see someday. If let's find the length of our Q if we know that PT is 4. If the length of PT is 4, what will the length of RQ be? It will be 8. So the way that you do that, if PT is 4, what's the length of TS? 4, and then that means the whole length of that PS would be 8, and it's congruent to RQ. So it'd also be 8. Okay, so keep that in mind about rectangles. Squares have a lot going on. They have all of the above. We can just write all of the above. They have all the properties of a parallelogram, all the properties of a rhombus, all the properties of a rectangle. We would take a while to write them. But you have this on your paper. Right above it, we have this shape. What is this shape? It's a rhombus. How do I know that it is a rhombus? Because what? It says it in the directions. So make sure you always read the directions. Parallelograms look like rhombuses too. So make sure you know what properties you're dealing with. This is a rhombus, so what property can I automatically draw on this picture? All the right angles. The diagonals are perpendicular in a rhombus, so go ahead and put those right angles. All right, so it says AED. What's the measure of angle AED? Is 90. ADE. It's in a triangle, right? You know 90 and you know 67, so you could find ADE by adding and subtracting from 180. So what's the measure of ADE? 23. BAE is a rhombus. It's going to be 67. Reason being, the diagonals cut the angles in half. So A was cut into two congruent halves. 67 on the right, 67 has to be on the left as well. AE, is it a side or a diagonal? It's a diagonal. Diagonals are cut in half, so what's the length of AE? 5. And it says BE, is it a side or a diagonal? It's a diagonal, so it will be 12.